Alright, what's going on everyone? In this video I'm going to show you how to upgrade the Mono Red Burn Challenger deck into the top tier meta deck that it's designed after. With a few small changes, we can actually have the fully finished deck that can frequently be seen top 8ing major Pioneer tournaments. So let's do that. And when I say we need to make a few small changes, I mean it, because this deck is basically done out of the box. I mean, okay, it has one major issue with this deck, and that is that it's mono red. The tier 1 deck splashes white in order to play Lurrus as a companion. It doesn't really add much else. There's only one white card in the deck, and that's Boros Charm, which is a really good burn spell. 2 mana, 4 damage, great burn spell, but it's the only card. It plays Lurrus, it plays Boros Charm, and that's it. Now Lurrus is great. Lurrus fixes one of Burn's major pitfalls, and that's gassing out. And every archetype has strengths and weaknesses. The weakness of Burn is that it runs out of cards before the opponent dies sometimes, and then it just can't finish the game. And Lurrus helps with that by allowing you to just recast everything in your graveyard. So Lurrus great, Boros Charm great. In order to add these though, it's expensive because you have to have dual lands, right? You need Battlefield Forge, Inspiring Vantage, Sacred Foundry. And remember, this is an aggro deck, so no tap lands. Tap lands are a no-no. You need dual lands, and you need dual lands that come into play untapped during the first couple turns. It's okay if lands come into play tapped on turn 4 or 5 or whatever, but on turn 1, 2, 3, you really want your lands to come into play untapped. So that's important, and in order to get those lands, it's expensive. So for the sake of this video, we're going to keep it mono red. We're going to ignore the white splash. Although, if you want to know what a Boros deck looks like, it looks like your deck with Lurrus and Boros Charm. But I'll leave links to Boros Burn decks in the description, check that out. But for this video, let's just keep it mono red. And there's only one card that you're missing in the mono red list. One card, and that's Eidolon of Great Revel. This card is played in every single mono red deck. So we'll take out 4 Viashino Pyromancers for 4 Eidolon of Great Revel. Now these are expensive. They're like $10 each, so you're looking at $40 or so USD. But it's played in every single deck. It's a 2 mana 2/2, deals 2 damage to people whenever they cast small spells. And that's powerful in Burn because you don't care about your own life total. You're going to kill them faster than they kill you typically. And if they take, 4, 6 damage from this, that's fantastic. It's so good, in fact, that it's played in modern aggro decks and legacy aggro decks. So Eidolon of Great Revel, great. It's expensive because it's a highly sought after card played in every format ever. But it's legal in Pioneer, and it's played in the Pioneer Burn deck. I do want to know, however, that tier 1 list technically replace Bone Crusher Giant with Eidolon of Great Revel. However, remember that they have to do this because they play Lurrus as a companion. When you have Lurrus, you're not allowed to run Bone Crusher Giant. You have to remove 3 drops from your deck. You can only play 2 drops or less. So Bone Crusher Giant has to go with Lurrus, but since we're not playing Lurrus, Bone Crusher Giant is clearly better. There's no way I'm playing Viashino Pyromancer over Bone Crusher Giant if I have an option to, though obviously if you're playing Lurrus, you just have to cut Bone Crusher Giant for the Pyromancer. So for sure, keep your Pyromancers. If you have any intention of upgrading this to a Lurrus deck in the future, you will have to take out the Bone Crusher Giants and add those Pyromancers back in. But for now, as a mono red deck with no Lurrus, would much rather have Bone Crusher Giant by far. Now, you can also take out Wild Slashes for Play with Fire. This is a new card, but it's already replacing Wild Slash. It's pretty obvious. Wild Slash is fine, 1 mana, 2 damage. Play with Fire does the same thing, but you get to scry when you hit the opponent. And the Wild Slash, sometimes it's unpreventable. You need a creature with high power, and it's how often is it relevant? It's probably been relevant before. Somewhere a game was played where that was relevant, but I would say 99.99% of the time, it doesn't really matter. Whereas scrying, especially in a deck that can gas out, very relevant. So Play with Fire, clear, obvious, easy upgrade. Just do that for sure. In the mana base, you can take out 1 or 2 mountains for 1 or 2 Cave of the Bugbear. This land is pretty solid. It enters untapped in the early turns, which is crucial for Burn and aggro decks, and it provides a mana sink when we get flooded, because the worst thing that can possibly happen in an aggro or burn deck is drawing too many lands. But with this, we have a mana sink. We have something to do with our mana if we draw too much of it, so that's definitely worth it. 100%. And as for your sideboard, it's basically done. A lot of decks do play Soul Guide Lantern, to be fair, and when I say a lot of decks, I'm talking like 60 to 70%, something like that. So not all of them, but a lot of them do. So if you want to add those in, especially if you're playing against a lot of graveyard decks, I would say Magma Sprays and Goblin Chain Rollers, these aren't really played in a lot of the meta decks. They're fine. You know, the sprays are great against decks that are constantly reanimating stuff like small creatures. Chain Rollers are a pseudo board sweeper, perfectly fine. These cards are fine, and you should always tailor your sideboard to your local meta and what you're playing against. So if token decks are a problem, keep the Chain Rollers. If your opponents are playing small creatures that keep coming back from the graveyard, Magma Spray is fine. But if graveyard decks are a problem, you can take one of each out, or one or the other, whatever, for those 2 lanterns. Not 100% necessary, but technically most decks are playing 2, because it's always nice to have graveyard hate just in case. You never know. And by the way, Lantern is played because it draws, and that's useful because if you're playing Burn, you don't want to waste a card on a graveyard hate card. So like, you could add Tormod's Crypt as a budget option that totally works, but it doesn't draw, which can sometimes make you fall behind. So Soul Guide Lantern giving you a redraw is relevant. That's why it's played. That's why people pay the $3 for it. But yeah, that's it, guys. We only needed to change a few cards. I mean, basically, we needed to put Eidolon of Great Revel in, which was unfortunately an expensive card. $10 each, $40. That kind of sucks. Sucks that it was kind of expensive, but for the most part, like, we have a finished deck in a box. Wizards of the Coast actually put a fairly complete competitive meta deck in a box, which is much appreciated. These decks are amazing for Pioneer players or casual players. They're very solid decks for casual play. So yeah, great deck, great product. Thank you, Wizards of the Coast, for that, and thank you for watching. I hope this video was helpful. Check out the other guides if you're interested. I will be making a guide for each deck, and yeah, I will see you in the next one.